watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am your host, Eli Price, and we are starting episode 61 today. It is a bit of a new kind of episode for us. I have kind of I guess you would say, a backlog of potential rerun episodes that I'll be using in the future, this being the first of those. The way I used to do the podcast is we would do main content and supplemental content all in the same episode. They got super, super long, and my recording schedule got super tight and hard to keep control of. So you probably noticed, if you've been a listener for a while, or maybe you just are used to the normal format, that we do the main content where we cover the filmography of a director. Right now we're about to be getting into the middle career of Steven Spielberg. That'll be starting up next week with his first movie of the 90s, Hook. We'll do those main episodes covering those movies, and then every other week, and then the weeks in between there's supplemental content. We'll do movie drafts, interviews, all sorts of stuff like that. So the way it used to be, all of that was all in one episode in different segments, and so I've kind of split up the way I do it. So what I'll start doing whenever I don't have a supplemental episode is I'll just clip out those old movie drafts and stick them in as kind of reruns, I guess. They're sort of reruns and sort of kind of just clipping out that movie draft. So that way, eventually all of those movie drafts will hopefully be in their own episodes. So they'll be more easily consumable and easy to find if you wanted to go back and listen to any of those past movie drafts, instead of having to like find the timestamp in the episode within the old episodes or whatever. So today we're going to be doing a rerun of the very first movie draft I did from the very first episode. The guest will be Jacob Phillips. He was my first ever guest, a good friend of mine. And that very first draft, all we did was we kind of went back and forth and took 4 movie decades each. So it was a movie decades draft. And so that's what you're going to listen to in just a minute. If you're watching, you'll notice the video content is significantly worse than it is now. And also the audio, if you're listening, is significantly not as good. And so I've definitely upgraded my equipment since that first episode. And so, just kind of bear with that. But yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. So let's jump into that. It is a draft of movie decades.
But I thought we'd start off with something way more general, like extremely general. And we're going to draft movie decades. And so I don't mean like drafting movies from decades. I mean, you're drafting the whole decade. So if you pick the 2000s, you're drafting all the movies in the 2000s. And so this will be a fun way to kind of get an idea of our tastes in movies. We'll maybe highlight like 2 or 3 movies from that decade that really make it worth taking. So Jacob, you're the guest. I'm going to let you start off. What decade are you taking?
So
please don't take the one I want first. I'm going to be so upset.
Well, I love many movies from this decade. And again, this is just, I don't know what's considered like the best movie decade of all time or whatever, but I I think it's because it's so close to when I was born. I'm gonna go ahead and draft the 1990s.
Oh shit. Oof. I'm very relieved. Yeah. Yeah, so
I
highlight
love
some of the movies from the 90s.
Yeah, so this is like kind of when like the Coen brothers, who are like probably my favorite directors, like they've put out some amazing movies this decade. You have Fargo, you have The Big Lebowski, which are two
Yeah.
phenomenal movies. Shawshank was released in '94. Reservoir Dogs, so the start of Tarantino, and Heat is a recent movie that I recently watched and absolutely blew me away. It's awesome. And then probably my last one that I'll mention is like Goodfellas, which was
Yeah.
1990 when it was released. So there's just a bunch of like really, really fun and good movies, and it's coming out of a decade from the 80s, which is just like so weird and zany. And this seems like
Yeah.
a return to like movie making, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some great I have my letterbox pulled up sorting by,
Yeah,
my highest rated, like 1999 is considered, one of the best movie years.
yeah,
And you have like I have some 5 stars in there, like The Matrix.
yeah,
And
for sure.
actually, like, spoiler alert, Rushmore, from the Wes Anderson series. I love 90s movie. The Iron Giant, man, it's just a great animated movie. But
Classic.
then you have like some stuff like The Thin Red Line,
Yeah,
from Malick, and Pulp Fiction, Seven. You got some of the Disney greats like Lion King, Beauty and the
yeah,
Beast. Uh, Man, there's some great stuff in here. So yeah, that's a good pick, but it is not the one that I wanted, and so I'm so
go
happy
ahead.
to draft the 1970s.
Nice.
Man, it's just some incredible films in the 70s.
Yeah,
Um, of course, I grew up a huge Star Wars fan, so you have the original Star Wars, or like A New Hope as we know it now.
sure.
But you have Jaws, what I think is Spielberg's best movie. You've got Rocky, just a great classic, Stallone. You have the original Alien.
Hmm.
Just Alien is just such a good thriller. Um, you've got some Coppola and Apocalypse Now,
Yeah.
Godfather Part Two. uh, I mean, you can go on and on. You've got Taxi Driver from Scorsese. You've got Days of Heaven from Malick.
Hmm.
And then like two that I've seen kind of in the last year and a half, from Tarkovsky's Stalker and Solaris, are two just
Hmm.
like incredibly poetic and like profound films that I've grown to love. Um, yeah, it's just a fantastic decade of movies. I think it might be my favorite movie decade, at
Yeah.
least like with what I've seen so far. Yeah,
Sure.
so that's
Yeah.
I think we're gonna draft 4 decades each. So go ahead and make your next pick. We might need to speed these up.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and draft. And again, probably recency bias, but I love the 2010s. Um,
Yeah,
2010. It's just got a bunch of, I mean, just absolute studs of movies. So like in my own personal like top 10, like La La Land, you have Moneyball is one of my favorite movies, Lady
hmm,
Bird, Mad Max Fury Road, just some like really, really already iconic movies, Dunkirk, as well on there, Birdman, we mentioned that earlier, Nightcrawler, Ex Machina. There's just a bunch of like really, really
yeah,
fun and good movies throughout that and I think part of why I love this decade so much is that this is kind of like right when the middle of this decade is when I really started becoming like a real like cinephile, and so a
right.
lot of these movies shape kind of how I view cinema and stuff like that.
Yeah, this would have definitely been my next choice, so I'm a little upset. I got the 70s, but this would have been my next choice. And it's similar. It's not it's There probably are some better decades, like,
Sure.
objectively.
Yeah.
But this was like when I really started growing a passion for movies. And I have some like just all-time favorites in here, like The Tree of Life. It's
Mm-hmm.
not for everyone, but man, it's just when I watched The Tree of Life, I was like, I've never seen anything like this before.
Yeah.
And so, but then, you've got Grand Budapest from, we're
Mm-hmm.
doing our West series, Mad Max Fury Road. I mean, just an incredible, maybe the best action film ever made.
Yeah.
Um, Parasite, one of the Academy finally got it right examples,
Definitely.
um, Interstellar, which is probably my favorite Chris Nolan movie. Yeah, there's some good ones. The Wind Rises is a Miyazaki that I love.
Yeah.
Silence by Scorsese, one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite. Um, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm gonna go next with. This is really hard. I think I'm gonna go 80s. You talked about it being this
Nice.
zany decade, but man, I've got some movies that I really like from this
Oh
decade.
yeah.
I mean, you have a lot of like, I think the '80s, the blockbusters really started getting going.
Yeah.
Um, but but man, there's some good ones like I love My Neighbor Totoro. Like, I will put on My Neighbor Totoro by Miyazaki and just smile the whole time. Like, there's some sad parts, but like, man, it just makes me smile. Empire Strikes Back. So I get the two best Star Wars movies. The King of Comedy is one of my favorite Scorsese's.
Yeah.
Paris, Texas is a movie I feel like a lot of people don't know about, by Wim Wenders, but that's an incredible movie. Do the Right Thing,
Yeah.
1989, Spike Lee's masterpiece. Uh, Raging Bull, another great Scorsese. You get Die Hard. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
Die Hard. And then even like one of my favorite documentaries of all time, the concert film Stop Making Sense,
Mm.
that covers the Talking Heads, David Byrne. I love that. That one makes me smile too. If you've never seen Stop Making Sense, just go watch it and watch the phenomena that is David Byrne, like, do magic on a stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, 1980s. So I've got the 70s and 80s. Where are you going next?
Yeah. Well, that was gonna be my next pick. Just a couple movies I love from that era, of course. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Top Gun. Talking about two blockbusters,
Yeah.
The Shining is excellent. The Princess Bride, forever underrated, but I feel like is such a fun movie.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah, that's true.
I'll go ahead and I'll take like even though I haven't seen a lot of movies from this decade, I really respect this decade, and I'll go with the '60s.
Yeah. Yeah,
There's
that's a
there's
great
so
choice.
many there's so many just like iconic movies. The first four that are listed on Letterboxd for the '60s is 2001: A Space Odyssey,
Right.
Psycho, Doctor Strangelove, and Rosemary's Baby. And
Yeah.
so like those are four. The Graduates on there as well: Sound of Music, Lawrence of Arabia, West Side Story, Lolita, Mary Poppins, Fistful of Dollars. Like there's
Yeah.
just on and on, just like these iconic movies that as you get more into movies, you just hear about over and over that like these are classics that you have to watch. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna
And
go
I
ahead and
mean,
pick
you've
them.
even got yeah, sorry. You've even got I mean, those French New Wave were
Yeah,
like super influential just to world cinema. I've caught up with a lot of 60s movies recently, just from
yeah,
Film Spotting does like a Film Spotting podcast, does a tournament, a March Madness
hmm
kind of tournament with movie decades. And they did the 60s this year. And so I caught up with a lot of these, a great decade. Um, yeah. So we're on our third choice, right? So my
hmm
third decade, it's probably a similar choice to where you went with. Like, I haven't seen a ton of these, but I respect it. Is the '50s.
mm.
Just some that I've seen that are incredible movies. Seven Samurai by Kurosawa, and then you got Singing in the Rain. Gotta love it. 12 Angry Men is great. You've got some like really good Disney and Cinderella, Alice in
Yeah,
Wonderland. Um, a lot of really good like musicals. Funny Face is one that I love
Yeah.
with Hepburn and Fred Astaire. Um, and but yeah, Godzilla, man, great
Yeah.
movie, Godzilla, the original. But yeah, I think I would pick this decade because there's a lot in this decade that I really want to get to. There's a
Yeah.
lot of great Hitchcock in this decade that Hitchcock is a huge blind spot. I've only seen a couple, and
Yeah, I'm the same way.
I would love to catch up with like some Hitchcock and some more Ingmar Bergman, some more Kurosawa in the 50s. Yeah, there's a lot of great movies in the 50s that I need to catch up with. So I'll take it, I guess.
Yeah. Good
What's your
choice.
last pick?
So this one is, we talk that we love fantasy football. Eli and I, we both know how you can fall in love with a prospect's potential. So I'm going to go with the 2020s. Why not? We're only 3 years in, but we've got some absolute amazing movies like Morbius, Black. I'm just kidding. No, but there really has been some really good movies that have come out of this, even though so many movies it seems like are attached to IP. But like the new take on the Batman, you have Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Yeah,
the Banshees of
great movie.
Inisherin, which I loved. Bullet Train is a really fun turn your brain off movie if you haven't seen it. Licorice Pizza was really fun. Tick Tick Boom, you got Tar. Like there's already been some pretty solid movies to come out of this decade already. And then, July 21st of this year, we got Barbie, we got Oppenheimer coming out.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm really pumped for those movies, especially. And then one of the biggest movies of all time, in Top Gun Maverick as well, coming out this decade.
That's true. Yeah. Saved the movies.
Save the movie theaters.
Yeah. 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 I love the idea of drafting for the potential, there's some upside there to draft.
Yeah. Or we could look back and it's just like, oh, it's just all MCU and Mario Brothers movies.
Yeah, it very well could be. My last pick, I'm struggling, man, because there's 3 decades I'm looking at, and they're very much so like I have a few that I really like, but also a lot to catch up on. And I think the biggest thing I'm struggling with is between the 20s and 30s. Here's the reason. I love Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin movies. I've caught up with a lot of those in the past like couple years, and man, I love them. But like a lot of the good Keaton is in the 20s, and a lot of the good Chaplin is in the early 30s, and I'm like, I just don't know what to pick. But I think I'm going to go ahead and just go with the 30s. Just kind of looking through. Chaplin. You got Modern Times and City Lights are just like great Chaplin movies. Drafting this decade, you get a little bit of versatility between, I've got 50s, 70s, 80s, and you got movies were pretty trucking by then, but in this era, you're still like, it's still like really close to the dawn of cinema. And so you have people doing some crazy stuff. You've still got silent films and that slapstick from Chaplin, but you're also like starting to get like The Wizard of Oz and movies like M. You've got like the monster movies, which like I caught up with Frankenstein last year. Frankenstein is just, it's so good. But you've also got like John Ford coming on the scene with Stagecoach and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll take, Top Hat. Great movie. It's just, Top Hat is so fun. Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers, great movie. So yeah, I'll take the 30s for my last one. Nice. I'm pretty happy. Yeah. So I ended with the 70s, the 80s, the 50s, and the 30s. What did you end up with, Jacob?
I ended up with the 90s, the 2010s, the 60s, and the 20s. The 2020s.
The 2020s, the decade of potential.
The roaring 20s.
Yeah, as we close out, Jacob, why don't you let us know where we can find you on social media, and maybe anything else you wanted to plug real quick before we end the show.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Philly Tweetin. So that's tweeting but without the G.
And you're on Letterboxd too. Letterboxd
Yes.
is a great app for kind of, it's like a movie social media. It's great.
Yeah.
You can have a diary, log your movies, write reviews, read other people's reviews.
Yeah, so you can
Make
find me
lists.
on there. Yeah, I do all of that. I like to log my movies and write either a full review or sometimes if the movie's just too good, I'll just write like a 1 sentence sort of thing. But
Or
it's
one word. I just saw you wrote sheesh for Heat. You watched Heat, and your reaction, your review was sheesh.
Yeah, it was that. Like if you watch it, you'll understand. So yeah, it's Cinephil. So my last name Phillips. My nickname is Philly. So yeah, CINEPHILL Cinephil on Letterboxd.
Well, thanks for listening to that old movie draft. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did when we did it. That was from our very first episode again, episode 1 of the podcast, that movie decades draft with Jacob. I'll make sure to put where you can follow him in the episode notes so you can easily click those links and go follow him. Yeah, if you could just take a moment to go rate and review the podcast wherever you listen that has a rating or reviewing system. Apple and Spotify are the two that are the most helpful. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. It just takes a second of your time and it really helps the visibility of the podcast. More people are able to find it more easily that way. And also share it with your friends. I don't ask people to do that very often, but yeah, share the social media post if you follow on social media. Send a link to an episode to a friend that you think they'll like for a movie that you know they like. So yeah, if you could do that, that would be awesome. And don't forget, you can also support the podcast and get some extra stuff if you go to establishingshotpod.com. You can find in the menu the way to become a supporter of the podcast, giving starting at $5 a month. And so I would greatly appreciate that. It helps me to get all the stuff I need and keep things running for the podcast. And yeah, I hope that you will do those things for me. And yeah, next week we will be jumping into Spielberg's first film of the 90s. Starting our kind of middle career Spielberg series, covering his movies of the 1990s and the 2000s. Looking forward to that. I have already done that episode, Hook, so it was a great episode. Looking forward to releasing it. And yeah, that's all we have for this week. So for now, I've been Eli Price, and you've been listening to The Establishing Shot. We will see you next week.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.